The woman stumbled into the dusty ranch yard just as the August sun began its descent over the Wyoming horizon. Her dress torn and her feet bleeding through what remained of her worn shoes. And Garrett Whitmore knew in that instant his carefully ordered life was about to change forever. He had been mending a section of fence near the main house when he saw her collapse near the water trough. Dropping his tools, Garrett ran across the yard, his boots kicking up small clouds of dirt with each stride. When he reached her, she was trying to push herself up on trembling arms, her dark hair falling in tangled waves around her face. "Easy now," Garrett said, his voice low and steady as he knelt beside her. "You are safe here." She flinched at his touch, and he could see the fear in her green eyes as she looked up at him. Dirt and tears streaked her face, and her lips were cracked from thirst and sun exposure. She could not have been more than 20 years old, he guessed, though suffering had aged her features beyond her years. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I need to keep moving. They might find me." "Who might find you?" Garrett asked, but she shook her head weakly. "I am nobody," she said, her eyes beginning to close. "Nobody at all." Those were the last words she spoke before she fainted in his arms. Garrett scooped her up, surprised at how light she was, and carried her toward the house. His foreman, Miguel, came running from the barn. "Boss, what happened?" "Found her by the trough," Garrett said. "Get some water and bandages. Tell Maria to prepare the guest room." Miguel nodded and rushed ahead. Garrett carried the woman up the wooden steps to his sprawling ranch house. It was a fine home by Wyoming standards in 1882, with real glass windows and a solid roof. He had built it himself over the past 5 years, turning his modest cattle operation into one of the most successful ranches between Shoshone and Cody. Maria, his housekeeper, was already turning down the bed in the guest room when he arrived. The older Mexican woman clucked her tongue sympathetically as Garrett laid the young woman down on the clean sheets. "Poor thing," Maria said. "She has been through something terrible. Look at her hands." Garrett looked. The woman's palms were raw and blistered as if she had been working without rest. Dark bruises marked her wrists, and there was a fading yellow bruise along her jaw. "Can you tend to her?" Garrett asked. "Make sure she has whatever she needs." "Of course," Maria said. "You go on now. This is woman's work." Garrett reluctantly left the room, though he found himself pacing the hallway outside. He could not explain the protective feeling that had surged through him the moment he saw her. As a rancher, he was used to being responsible for his land, his cattle, his men, but this was different. This felt personal in a way that unsettled him. He was 30 years old and had never married, much to his mother's dismay back in Pennsylvania. The ranch demanded all his time and energy, or so he had always told himself. The truth was simpler and more complicated. He had never met a woman who made him want to build a life beyond the one he already had, until perhaps now, which was ridiculous considering he did not even know her name. Maria emerged from the room an hour later carrying a basin of dirty water. "She will live," she said, "but she has been badly used. Someone has hurt this girl, and recently." "Did she say anything?" Garrett asked. "Not yet. She is sleeping now, but it is a natural sleep. The fever is not too high. With rest and food she should recover." Garrett nodded. "Thank you, Maria. Let me know when she wakes." That night, Garrett found it difficult to sleep. He kept thinking about those green eyes and the way she had whispered that she was nobody. What kind of life had she lived that made her believe such a thing? The next morning, Maria informed him that the woman was awake and asking for him. Garrett knocked softly on the door before entering. She was sitting up in bed, wearing one of Maria's nightgowns, her hair brushed and pulled back from her clean face. In the morning light, he could see she was beautiful, though fear still haunted her eyes. "I wanted to thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me. I will leave as soon as I am able. I do not want to bring trouble to your door." "What is your name?" Garrett asked, pulling a chair close to the bed. She hesitated, her fingers twisting in the blanket. Violet Harper." "Well, Miss Harper, you are welcome to stay as long as you need. This is a big ranch, and we can always use help if you are willing to work once you have healed." "Why would you do that?" Violet asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. "You do not know me. I could be anyone." "You could be," Garrett agreed. "But I figure you deserve a chance to tell your story when you are ready. Until then, you are safe here. That is my promise." Tears welled in Violet's eyes, and she quickly looked away. "I have not had much kindness in my life, Mr. Whitmore. I do not know why you are offering it now." "Call me Garrett," he said. "And maybe I am offering it because it is the right thing to do, or maybe because something tells me you deserve better than whatever brought you to my door." Over the next week, Violet slowly began to recover her strength. Maria fed her hearty meals, and the color returned to her cheeks. The cuts on her feet healed, though the deeper wounds would take longer. Garrett found excuses to check on her several times a day, bringing her books from his small library and telling her stories about the ranch. She listened intently but shared little about herself. He learned she was 19, that she could read and write, and that she had worked as a maid in Cheyenne before coming to Shoshone. But the details of her escape, of who had hurt her and why, remained locked behind her careful silence. On the 8th day, Violet appeared in the kitchen dressed in a simple work dress Maria had altered for her. "I would like to earn my keep," she announced, "if the offer still stands." Maria looked to Garrett, who nodded. "What kind of work do you prefer?" "I can cook, clean, mend clothes," Violet said. "I am good with my hands when they are not torn up." "Then you can help Maria in the house," Garrett said. "The Lord knows this place could use a woman's touch beyond what Maria has time for." And so Violet became part of the household. At first, she was skittish as a wild horse, jumping at sudden noises and watching the road with anxious eyes. But gradually, the peaceful rhythm of ranch life began to ease her fears. She worked hard, harder than Garrett expected, as if trying to prove her worth with every task. In the evenings after dinner, Garrett would often find her sitting on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. He began joining her there, and slowly she started to open up. "I was born in Missouri," she told him one night in September, 2 months after her arrival. "My parents died when I was 12, cholera. I had no other family, so I went to work for a wealthy family in St. Louis." "That must have been hard," Garrett said. "It was survival," Violet replied. "The family was not unkind at first, but then the eldest son took an interest in me. When I was 17, he cornered me one night. I fought him off and ran. I have been running ever since." Garrett felt anger burn in his chest. "Did he follow you?" "He sent men after me," Violet said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I worked in Cheyenne for nearly a year, thinking I was safe. But then I saw one of them asking questions at the hotel where I worked. I ran again. I had heard of Shoshone, thought it was remote enough, but I ran out of money before I got here. I walked the last 30 miles. "You walked 30 miles through open country?" Garrett asked, stunned. "I had no choice," Violet said simply. "And then I found your ranch and you. I keep waiting for the dream to end, for someone to tell me I have to leave." Garrett reached over and gently took her hand, feeling her flinch before relaxing. "This is not a dream, Violet, and you do not have to run anymore. If anyone comes looking for you here, they will have to go through me first." She turned to look at him, tears shining in her eyes. "Why are you so kind to me? I told you I am nobody." "You are not nobody," Garrett said firmly. "You are brave and strong, and you survived things that would have broken most people. You are somebody, Violet Harper, and I am starting to think you might be somebody very important." The air between them changed in that moment, charging with something neither had expected. Violet quickly pulled her hand back, standing up. "I should go in. Maria will wonder where I am." But as she passed him, she paused and whispered, "Thank you, Garrett." He sat on the porch long after she had gone, his hand still warm from her touch, and knew he was falling in love with her. The autumn brought cooler weather and a steady routine. Violet flourished in the safe environment, her confidence growing with each passing week. She proved to be an excellent cook, and the ranch hands began to look forward to meals with an enthusiasm that made Garrett laugh. She also had a way with the horses, gentling them with soft words and patient hands. Garrett found himself inventing reasons to be near her. He would come in for lunch when he normally ate with the men. He would help Maria and Violet carry supplies from the wagon, even though they were perfectly capable. He would linger over coffee after dinner, just to hear her voice as she talked about her day. Miguel noticed, of course. One afternoon, while they were checking the herd in the north pasture, the foreman grinned at him. "You are in love with her, boss." "Do not be ridiculous," Garrett said, but his denial sounded weak even to his own ears. "It is not ridiculous," Miguel said. "It is obvious. You light up when she enters a room, and she is the same with you whether she admits it or not." "She has been through too much," Garrett said. "She needs time, not some rancher pushing his affections on her." "Time, yes," Miguel agreed, "but do not wait too long. A woman like that will not stay unclaimed forever." Garrett knew Miguel was right, but he also knew he had to be careful. Violet was just beginning to trust again, just beginning to believe in her own worth. The last thing he wanted was to make her feel pressured or unsafe. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. In late October, a stranger rode into the ranch yard. He was well dressed, with a fine horse and expensive saddle, and something about him immediately set Garrett's teeth on edge. Violet, who had been hanging laundry, froze when she saw him, and then dropped her basket and ran for the house. Garrett stepped off the porch to intercept the man. "Can I help you?" "I am looking for a young woman," the stranger said, his voice cultured but cold. Dark hair, green eyes, about 19 years old. She ran away from her employer in Cheyenne. There is a reward for information leading to her return. "This is a cattle ranch," Garrett said evenly. "Not a boarding house. I have not seen anyone matching that description." The stranger smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Are you sure?" "Because I have reason to believe she came this way. A shopkeeper in Shoshone mentioned a young woman matching her description was seen at this ranch." "Then the shopkeeper was mistaken," Garrett said. His hand drifted casually to the gun at his hip. "Now I will ask you to leave my property." The stranger's eyes narrowed. "I represent the Aldridge family of St. Louis. They are very interested in finding this woman. She stole from them." "If this woman stole from them, then it is a matter for the law," Garrett said. "Do you have a warrant?" "Not yet," the stranger admitted. "But Mr. Richard Aldridge is prepared to be very generous to anyone who helps him locate her." "Then I suggest you ride into Shoshone and speak with the sheriff," Garrett said, "because you are not going to find what you are looking for here." The stranger stared at him for a long moment, then tipped his hat mockingly. "Very well. But I will be watching this ranch, Mr. Whitmore. If the woman I am seeking happens to appear, I will know." He rode off, and Garrett watched until he was out of sight before heading into the house. He found Violet in her room, trembling as Maria held her. "He found me," Violet whispered. "Richard sent him. He will never let me go." "Tell me everything," Garrett said, kneeling in front of her. "I need to know what we are dealing with." And so Violet told him the full story. Richard Aldridge, the eldest son of the wealthy family she had worked for, had indeed assaulted her. When she fought back and escaped, He accused her of theft to cover his shame and to have legal justification to pursue her. He had been hunting her for 2 years, not because of stolen goods, but because she had rejected and humiliated him. "He told me once that I belonged to him," Violet said, her voice breaking. "That someone like me should be grateful for his attention. When I refused him, he said he would make sure I never escaped him." Garrett felt cold fury settle in his gut. "He will not take you, I will not allow it." "How can you stop him?" Violet asked. "He has money, influence, hired men. What do I have? I am just a servant who ran away." Garrett took both her hands in his. "You have me, and you have the truth. We are going to fight this, Violet, together." The next morning, Garrett rode into Shoshone to speak with Sheriff Coleman, an honest man Garrett had known for years. He explained the situation, carefully omitting nothing. "These are serious accusations," Coleman said, leaning back in his chair, "against a wealthy man from St. Louis. It will be hard to prove." "I know," Garrett said, "but I also know Violet Harper and I know she is telling the truth. Will you help us?" Coleman studied him for a long moment. "You are in love with her." "Yes," Garrett admitted. "I am, but that does not change the facts. Richard Aldridge assaulted her and has been pursuing her under false pretenses." "All right," Coleman said. "I will send some telegrams, make inquiries. But Whitmore, you need to understand that even if we prove she did not steal anything, the assault charge will be hard to make stick. It is her word against his, and the law does not typically favor women in these situations." "Then what do you suggest?" Garrett asked. Coleman leaned forward. "Marry her. If she is your wife, she has legal protection as part of your household. Aldridge will have a much harder time taking her if she is a married woman, especially married to a respected rancher. It is not perfect, but it might be enough to make him give up." Garrett left the sheriff's office with his mind spinning. Marry Violet. He wanted to, had been dreaming about it for weeks, but not like this. Not as a legal maneuver to protect her. He wanted her to marry him because she loved him, because she wanted to build a life with him, not because she was trapped and desperate. When he returned to the ranch, he found Violet in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with fierce concentration. She looked up when he entered, flour dusting her nose. "What did the sheriff say?" Garrett told her about the telegrams, about Coleman's promise to investigate. And then, taking a deep breath, he told her about the marriage suggestion, Violet's hands stilled in the dough. "He wants me to marry you. He thinks it would provide legal protection," Garrett said carefully. "But Violet, I need you to know something. I do not want you to feel obligated or forced into anything. You have had enough of that in your life." "Then what do you want?" Violet asked, looking up at him with those green eyes that haunted his dreams. "I want you to be safe," Garrett said. "I want you to be happy. And if I am being completely honest, I want you to be mine, but only if that is what you want too." Violet wiped her hands on her apron, leaving white streaks. She walked around the table to stand in front of him. "You have given me more in 3 months than anyone has given me in my entire life. You have given me safety, respect, kindness. You have made me feel like a person again, not a possession or a burden." "You are a person," Garrett said. "A remarkable one." "I am afraid," Violet whispered. "Afraid that Richard will take me back, afraid that I am dreaming. But I am also afraid of something else." "What?" "I am afraid that I am falling in love with you," she said. "And I do not know if that is real or if I just feel that way because you saved me." Garrett reached up and gently cupped her face in his hands. "Do you want to know what I think? I think you are one of the bravest people I have ever met. I think you have survived things that would have destroyed most people. And I think that when you fall in love, it will be real because you do not do anything halfway." "How can you be so sure?" she asked. "Because I see you," Garrett said. "Every day I see you becoming more yourself, and the woman I see is strong and kind and full of fire. That woman could never mistake gratitude for love. So if you tell me you love me, I will believe you. Tears spilled down Violet's cheeks. I do love you. I think I started loving you the first day when you said I was somebody. But I am terrified, Garrett. What if Richard takes me away? What if I bring nothing but trouble to your life? Then we face that trouble together, Garrett said. Marry me, Violet. Not because you have to, not because it is the practical thing to do, but because you want to build a life with me. Because you love me and I love you. Yes, Violet said, and then louder. Yes, I will marry you. Garrett pulled her into his arms and kissed her, a gentle kiss full of promise and hope. When they finally pulled apart, Violet was smiling through her tears. I never thought I would have this, she said. A home, love, a future. Well, you have all three now, Garrett said. And I am not going to let anyone take them away from you. They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church in Shoshone. Maria and Miguel stood as witnesses, along with Sheriff Coleman and a handful of ranch hands. Violet wore a blue dress Maria had helped her make, and she had wildflowers in her hair. When Garrett saw her walking toward him, his breath caught. She looked radiant, all traces of the frightened woman who had collapsed in his yard gone. In her place was his wife, his partner, his everything. I never knew I could be this happy, she whispered as they exchanged vows. Get used to it, Garrett whispered back, because I plan to make you happy every day for the rest of our lives. That night, in the home they now shared, Garrett made love to his wife with a tenderness that brought tears to both their eyes. Violet had been so afraid, carrying the trauma of Richard's assault, but Garrett was patient and gentle, showing her what love could be. You are beautiful, he told her as he kissed away her fears. You are precious. You are mine and I am yours, and nothing will ever hurt you again. Violet believed him. For the first time in years, she felt safe enough to truly let go, to give herself completely to another person. And in Garrett's arms, she discovered that love could heal even the deepest wounds, but their peace was short-lived. 2 weeks after the wedding, Richard Aldridge himself arrived in Shoshone with 4 hired men. Garrett was in town when they rode in, and he positioned himself between Richard and the general store where Violet was shopping with Maria. You must be the rancher who stole my property, Richard said. He was handsome in a cruel way, with cold blue eyes and a thin mouth. If you are referring to my wife, she is not property, Garrett said evenly. And she never was. Your wife, Richard laughed. You married that little thief, how quaint. Unfortunately, marriage does not erase the theft charges against her. I have a warrant here from Missouri. He pulled out a folded paper, and Sheriff Coleman, who had appeared at the sound of raised voices, examined it. This is from Missouri. I will need to verify it. By all means, Richard said smoothly. But in the meantime, I would like to speak with Violet. Alone. That will not be happening, Garrett said. I am not asking for your permission, Richard said, his voice hardening. She belongs to me. She belongs to herself, Garrett said. And she is married to me, which means you have no claim on her whatsoever. We will see what the law has to say about that, Richard said. He looked past Garrett to where Violet had emerged from the store, Maria at her side. His face twisted into something ugly. There she is. Hello, Violet, did you miss me? Violet went pale, but she did not run. Instead, she walked to Garrett's side and took his hand. I have nothing to say to you, Richard. Leave me alone. You stole from my family, Richard said. You will answer for that. I stole nothing, Violet said, her voice steady despite her fear. You assaulted me, and when I escaped, you lied to cover your crime. A crowd had gathered, townspeople drawn by the commotion. Richard looked around, clearly uncomfortable with the audience. These are serious accusations. Yes, they are, Sheriff Coleman said. Which is why we are going to sort this out properly. "Mr. Aldridge, I am going to send some telegrams to Missouri, to the sheriff in St. Louis. We are going to get to the bottom of this." "I have already explained the situation," Richard said. "She is a thief." "Then you will not mind waiting while we verify that," Coleman said. It was not a question. Richard's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. But I want her kept under guard. She is a flight risk." "Mrs. Whitmore will remain with her husband at their ranch," Coleman said. "That is my decision." As they rode back to the ranch, Violet was shaking. Garrett kept one arm around her as they rode, feeling the tremors running through her body. "We are going to get through this," he promised. "What if they believe him?" Violet asked. "What if they send me back to Missouri?" "They will not," Garrett said with more confidence than he felt. "Coleman is on our side and the truth will come out." But that night, as they lay in bed, Violet clung to him with desperate intensity. "Promise me," she whispered. "Promise me that no matter what happens, you will not let him take me." "I promise," Garrett said, holding her tight. "I will not lose you. I just found you." The next few days were tense. Richard and his men took rooms at the hotel in Shoshone, making their presence known. Sheriff Coleman worked tirelessly, sending telegram after telegram and gathering information. And Garrett barely let Violet out of his sight, afraid that Richard would try something. On the fourth day, Coleman rode out to the ranch with news. Garrett and Violet met him on the porch, both steeling themselves for whatever he had learned. "I heard back from the sheriff in St. Louis," Coleman said, "and from several other sources. The picture that emerged is interesting." "Tell us," Garrett said, his hand gripping Violet's. "There was never any official theft report filed," Coleman said. "The Aldridge family made some inquiries, but they never went to the police. I spoke with several people who worked in the Aldridge household around the time Violet left. 2 other maids had quit suddenly before her, both citing unwanted advances from Richard Aldridge." Violet gasped. "I thought I was the only one." "You were not," Coleman said gently. "And one of those women is willing to testify to what she experienced. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. She is married now, living in Kansas, and when she heard that Richard was pursuing another woman, she decided to come forward." "So there is no warrant?" Garrett asked. "There never was a legitimate one," Coleman said. "The paper Richard showed me was a forgery. I wired the court in Missouri, and they have no record of it, which means Richard Aldridge is the one who has committed a crime, not Violet." Relief flooded through Garrett so powerfully he had to sit down. Violet stood frozen, as if unable to believe what she was hearing. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now, I arrest Richard Aldridge for fraud and harassment," Coleman said. "And you, Mrs. Whitmore, are free." They rode back into town together, and Garrett would never forget the look on Richard's face when Sheriff Coleman walked into the hotel with the real story. Richard tried to bluster and threaten, but the crowd that had gathered was no longer on his side. When Coleman put him in handcuffs, Violet started to cry. "It is over," she said, over and over. "It is really over." Richard was escorted out of Shoshone the next day, headed back to Missouri to face charges. As Garrett and Violet watched him go, she leaned into her husband's embrace. "I spent so long running," she said. "I almost cannot believe I do not have to anymore." "You are home now," Garrett said. "And you are safe. Finally, truly safe." The winter came, blanketing the ranch in snow and forcing them all indoors. Garrett had never been happier. Coming home each evening to find Violet in the kitchen, her face flushed from the heat of the stove, made all the hard work worthwhile. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking about their dreams and plans. "I want children," Violet said one night as they watched the flames dance. "I want to give them the childhood I never had, safety and love and a real home." "I want that too," Garrett said, "but there is no rush. We have all the time in the world. but Violet shook her head. "I wasted so much time being afraid. I do not want to waste any more. I want to live, Garrett, really live." And so they did. That winter was a time of healing and growing closer. Violet blossomed in ways that took Garrett's breath away. Her laughter came more easily. Her nightmares faded, and the love between them deepened into something solid and enduring. By spring, Violet was pregnant. When she told Garrett the news, he swept her up and spun her around, both of them laughing with joy. "You are going to be a father," she said, her eyes shining. "Can you believe it?" "With you, I can believe anything," Garrett said. The pregnancy was not easy. Violet struggled with sickness in the early months, and Garrett worried constantly. But Maria and Dr. Stevens, the physician from Shoshone, both assured him that everything was progressing normally. And as Violet's belly grew, so did her radiance. "I have never felt more myself," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Her hand rested on her rounded stomach. "I spent so long feeling like I did not belong anywhere. But now, carrying your child married to you, I finally understand what it means to be home." "You are my home too," Garrett said, kissing her temple. "You and this baby. You are my whole world." Their son was born in December, just as the first heavy snow began to fall. The labor was long and difficult, and Garrett paced the hallway outside their bedroom for hours, terrified by the sounds of Violet's pain. But when Dr. Stevens finally opened the door and invited him in, Garrett found his wife sitting up in bed, exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "Meet your son," Violet said softly. Garrett approached the bed with trembling hands and looked down at the baby. He was red-faced and wrinkled, with a tuft of dark hair and the tiniest fingers Garrett had ever seen. When those little fingers closed around Garrett's thumb, he felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Garrett whispered. "What should we name him?" Violet asked. They had discussed names for months but never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his son, Garrett knew. "James, after my father, James Whitmore," Violet said, testing the name. "I love it." That winter was the coldest in recent memory, but inside the ranch house, there was only warmth and light. Garrett learned how to change diapers and soothe a crying baby at 2 in the morning. Violet recovered her strength and proved to be a natural mother, patient and loving even when exhaustion made her eyes heavy. On Christmas Eve, they sat together in the parlor, the fire crackling merrily. James was asleep in his cradle, and Garrett had one arm around Violet as she leaned against his shoulder. "You remember last year at this time?" Violet asked. "I had only been here a few months. I was so afraid, so uncertain." "I remember," Garrett said. "I remember thinking I had never met anyone braver." "I was not brave," Violet said. "I was just desperate." "You were both," Garrett said. "And you still are one of the bravest people I know. Look at everything we have built together." Violet looked around the room at the home they had made, at their sleeping son, at the man she loved. "I used to think I was nobody," she said quietly. "That was what I told you when you found me. Do you remember?" "I remember," Garrett said. "And I told you then that you were wrong." "You did," Violet agreed. "And you spent every day since then proving it to me. You made me believe I was worthy of love, of happiness, of all of this. You made me your everything, Garrett, and you are mine." Garrett kissed her softly. "Merry Christmas, my love." "Merry Christmas," she whispered back. The years that followed were full of joy and growth. James grew into a sturdy boy with his mother's green eyes and his father's determination. When he was 3, Violet gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Rose, who kept the household in a constant state of delighted chaos. The ranch prospered under Garrett's careful management, expanding its herd and reputation. Violet became a pillar of the community in Shoshone. She organized church socials, taught reading to the children of ranch hands, and never turned away anyone who needed help. People who did not know her history would never guess at the suffering she had endured. But those who knew understood that her kindness came from a place of deep empathy and strength. Maria, who had been with Garrett since he first bought the ranch, lived to see all 3 children born and loved them as fiercely as if they were her own grandchildren. When she passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 72, the whole town mourned. Violet wept for days, having lost the closest thing to a mother she had known since childhood. "She gave me a home when I had none," Violet said at the funeral. "She taught me that family is not just blood, but love and choice. I will miss her every day." Garrett held her as she cried. Their children pressed close around them. Even in grief, he marveled at how far they had come, how much they had built together from that desperate beginning. Miguel eventually married as well, bringing his bride Rosa to live on the ranch. She and Violet became close friends, and their children grew up together, running wild across the open land. The ranch employed 20 men by 1895, and Garrett had built a schoolhouse on the property so all the children could receive an education. Through it all, the love between Garrett and Violet only deepened. They still sat together on the porch most evenings when weather permitted, watching the sun set over the mountains. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they simply held hands in comfortable silence. But always, there was the bone-deep contentment of 2 people who had found their other half. One evening in the summer of 1898, when James was 6 and the twins were 3, Violet told Garrett she was pregnant again. They were in the barn, checking on a mare that was due to foal, and Garrett had been examining the horse's legs when Violet spoke. "I am expecting another child," she said simply. Garrett straightened up so fast he nearly hit his head on a beam. "Another one? Is that all right?" Violet asked, suddenly uncertain. "All right." Garrett pulled her into his arms, laughing. "It is better than all right. It is wonderful." This pregnancy was easier than the others, and in March of 1899, Violet gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Thomas. He was quiet and observant from the start, and Garrett joked that he would be the thoughtful one, the scholar among their energetic brood. As the new century approached, Garrett and Violet found themselves reflecting on how much had changed since that August day in 1882, when she had stumbled into his ranch yard. They were 37 and 36 respectively, no longer young but not yet old, settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long marriage. "Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life," Violet said one night as they prepared for bed. The house was finally quiet, all 4 children asleep. "I used to dream about having a home, a family, but I never really believed it would happen." "I am glad you were wrong," Garrett said, pulling her close, "because I cannot imagine my life without you. You are still my everything, Violet, even more so now than on the day we married." "And you are mine," Violet said. "You saved me, Garrett, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Garrett corrected gently. "You gave me a reason to build more than just a successful ranch. You gave me a family, a home full of love and laughter. You gave me everything that matters." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, each knowing exactly how to bring pleasure to the other. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Violet said, "I want you to know something. Even if I could go back and change my past, erase all the pain and suffering, I would not." "Why not?" Garrett asked, surprised. "Because all of it led me to you," Violet said. "Every hard moment, every terrible thing, it all brought me to that day when I collapsed in your yard. And you were there, Garrett. You were exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it. That cannot be coincidence. That has to be fate." "Then I am grateful for fate," Garrett said. "Even though I hate what you went through, even though I wish you had never suffered." "I know," Violet said. "But the suffering is over. It has been over for a long time. Now there is only this, only us and our children and this beautiful life we have built." As the 1900s began, the ranch continued to thrive. James, now 8, began to take an interest in ranching, following his father around and asking endless questions. The twins, at 5, were a handful of energy and mischief, always getting into something. And little Thomas, toddling around on chubby legs, was the baby of the family and thoroughly spoiled by his older siblings. Violet watched them grow with a heart full of gratitude. Every milestone, every scraped knee, every bedtime story was a gift she never took for granted. She had learned too well how fragile happiness could be, how quickly it could be stolen away. So she cherished every moment, holding nothing back. One afternoon in the spring of 1903, a letter arrived from Kansas. It was from Sarah Mitchell, the woman who had testified about Richard Aldridge's behavior years before. Violet had written to her several times over the years, and they had developed a friendship through their correspondence. Sarah wrote that Richard had died the previous winter, having fallen from his horse while drunk. He left behind substantial debts and a tarnished reputation. The Aldridge family fortune had been squandered, and his parents had passed away ashamed of their son. Violet read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. She felt nothing at the news of Richard's death, no satisfaction or grief. That part of her life was so far behind her that it felt like it had happened to someone else. "What is the letter?" Garrett asked, coming into the kitchen where she sat. "Richard Aldridge is dead," Violet said simply. Garrett sat down beside her, searching her face. "How do you feel?" "Nothing," Violet said honestly. "He is part of a past that I have moved beyond. He cannot hurt me anymore, but even if he were alive, I do not think he could. I am not that frightened girl anymore, Garrett. I have not been for a long time." "No, you are not," Garrett agreed. "You are a strong, confident woman, a wonderful mother and wife, and I am proud of you." Violet smiled and kissed him softly. "Thank you for seeing me that way, for always seeing me that way." As the children grew older, Violet began to share her story with them, not the painful details, but the broad strokes. She wanted them to understand that everyone has struggles, that strength comes from overcoming adversity. James, especially, seemed to grasp the lessons she was trying to teach. "You were very brave, Mama," he said one evening when he was 10. They were sitting on the porch, just the two of them, watching the stars come out. "I was very lucky," Violet corrected. "Lucky that I found your father. Lucky that I had people willing to help me. Bravery is not doing hard things alone, James. It is accepting help when you need it and having the courage to keep going even when you are afraid." "I want to be brave like you," James said seriously. "You already are," Violet said, ruffling his hair. "Every day you show courage in small ways, being kind when it is easier to be mean. Working hard even when you would rather play. Loving your sisters even when they annoy you," James laughed. "They annoy me a lot." "That is part of having sisters," Violet said, laughing too. "But they love you and you love them. That is what matters." The years continued to pass in a blur of happy moments. Emma and Rose grew into beautiful young women, both inheriting their mother's green eyes and their father's strength. Thomas became the reader of the family, always with his nose in a book. And James, true to his early interest, took to ranching like he was born to it, working alongside his father every day. In 1912, when James was 20, he married a schoolteacher from Shoshone named Margaret. The wedding was held on the ranch with half the town in attendance. Garrett walked his son through the ceremony with pride, and Violet wept happy tears as she watched her boy become a man. "Where did the time go?" she asked Garrett that night as they danced at the reception. "It went into moments like this," Garrett said. "Moments so full of joy they make up for all the hard times." "We have had very few hard times," Violet said. "Not since those first years. We have been blessed, Garrett." "We have been blessed with each other," Garrett agreed. That blessing continued as grandchildren began to arrive. James and Margaret had 3 children in quick succession, and Garrett and Violet found themselves in the new role of grandparents. It suited them both, though Violet joked that she was too young to be called grandmother. "The children can call you whatever you like," Garrett said. "But you will always be my Violet." The twins married within a year of each other, Emma to a lawyer in Shoshone and Rose to a rancher from a neighboring spread. Thomas, true to his scholarly nature, went to university in Laramie and became a teacher. The ranch house, once so quiet, now rang with the laughter of children and grandchildren whenever the family gathered. On a warm evening in August of 1920, Garrett and Violet celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary. They sat on the porch of the home they had built together, watching the sun set in shades of orange and pink. They were both 58 now, their hair touched with gray, but the love in their eyes when they looked at each other was as strong as ever. "Do you remember the first time we sat here together?" Garrett asked. "When you told me about your past." "I remember," Violet said. "I was so afraid you would send me away once you knew the truth." "I could never have sent you away," Garrett said. "Even then, I think I knew you were meant to be mine." "I was nobody," Violet said softly, echoing the words she had spoken so long ago. "That was what I believed. And I made you my everything," Garrett said, taking her hand. "Just as you made me yours. We made each other whole," Violet said. "That is what real love does. It does not complete you as if you are missing pieces. It makes you want to be the best version of yourself." Garrett pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Around them, the ranch hummed with life. Cattle lowed in the distance. A grandchild's laughter drifted from the barn where James was teaching his eldest son to ride. The smell of bread baking wafted from the kitchen where Margaret and the twins were preparing tomorrow's meals. "This is what I dreamed of," Violet said. "When I was young and alone and afraid, I dreamed of belonging somewhere, of being loved, of having a family. But the reality is so much better than any dream." "That is because we built it together," Garrett said. "Every moment, every decision, every challenge we faced, we did it as partners. That is why it worked. That is why it will always work." "Always," Violet agreed, leaning her head on his shoulder. As the years advanced into the 1920s, both Garrett and Violet slowed down, but they never stopped finding joy in each other. They took long walks around the ranch property, pointing out changes and remembering the past. They spent evenings reading to each other, or playing with their growing number of grandchildren, or simply sitting together in the quiet contentment of a love that had weathered everything life could throw at it. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1932, the family threw them a huge celebration. Every one of their children and grandchildren was there, along with friends from all over Wyoming. The old ranch house was full to bursting with love and laughter. During the party, James stood up to make a toast. He was 42 now, a successful rancher in his own right, but his voice wavered with emotion as he spoke. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass. "They taught me everything I know about love, about family, about what it means to build a life worth living. My mother came from nothing, but she gave us everything. And my father saw the treasure in a woman the world had overlooked. Together, they created something beautiful, something lasting. May we all be so blessed. Everyone raised their glasses, and Violet felt tears streaming down her face. Garrett squeezed her hand, his own eyes wet. "We did good," he whispered to her. "We did great," she whispered back. That night, alone in their room after all the guests had left, Garrett and Violet lay in bed holding hands. They were both 70 now, and their bodies ached in ways they never had when they were young. But none of that mattered. 50 years, Violet said wonderingly. "Half a century since the day you made me your wife." "Best decision I ever made," Garrett said. "What do you think the next 50 years will bring?" Violet asked, teasing. "Let us just focus on the next 50 days, Garrett said, laughing. "Then the next 50 after that. We will take it as it comes, just like we always have." "Together," Violet said. "Always together," Garrett agreed. They fell asleep that way, hands intertwined, hearts beating in sync, two people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. And in the morning, they would wake up and do it all over again, because that was what they did. They loved each other, fiercely and completely, every single day. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Spring brought new calves and the first wildflowers. Summer meant long days of hard work under the bright Wyoming sun. Autumn painted the mountains in brilliant colors, and winter wrapped the ranch in peaceful white silence. Through it all, Garrett and Violet remained each other's constant, each other's anchor. In 1935, Violet's health began to decline. She developed a persistent cough that worried everyone. Dr. Stevens, now quite elderly himself, examined her and confirmed what the family feared. Her lungs were weakening, likely from years of hard work and the harsh Wyoming winters. Garrett refused to accept it at first. He brought in specialists from as far as Denver, but they all said the same thing. Violet was 73 years old, and her body was simply wearing out. All they could do was make her comfortable. "I am not afraid," Violet told Garrett one evening as they sat together in their room. She had been confined to bed for the past month, too weak to do much more than sit up and visit with family. "I have lived a full life, Garrett, a beautiful life, more than I ever thought possible." "I am not ready to lose you," Garrett said, his voice breaking. "I need more time." "We have had 53 years, Violet said gently. "That is more time than most people get, and I have loved every moment of it, every single moment with you. How am I supposed to live without you?" Garrett asked, tears streaming down his weathered face. "The same way you lived before you met me," Violet said. "You surround yourself with the people you love. You take care of this beautiful ranch. You watch your grandchildren grow. And you remember that I will always be with you, Garrett." Always. The entire family gathered at the ranch in October of that year. James came with his wife and 3 grown children. Emma brought her family from Shoshone. Rose traveled from her ranch with her husband and 4 kids, and Thomas took leave from his teaching position in Laramie to be there. They all took turns sitting with Violet, sharing memories and telling her how much she meant to them. The great-grandchildren, some of them teenagers now, others still small, climbed onto the bed to hug her and show her drawings and school papers. "You have given all of us so much," Emma said, holding her mother's hand. "You taught us what it means to be strong, to be kind, to love without reservation." "You taught yourselves those things," Violet said weakly. "I just showed you it was possible." On a cool evening in late October, as the sun set one last time over the mountains she had called home for over 50 years, Violet Harper Whitmore took her last breath. Garrett was beside her, holding her hand, whispering that he loved her. Their children surrounded the bed, and the last thing Violet heard was the sound of her family, the beautiful family she and Garrett had created together. She died with a smile on her face. Garrett aged rapidly after Violet's death. Without his life partner, his anchor, he seemed to lose direction. But his children and grandchildren rallied around him, making sure he was never alone, reminding him daily of the legacy of love he and Violet had built. James, now running the ranch himself, made sure his father stayed involved. Every morning, Garrett would walk out to the barn and offer advice or tell stories about the old days. He talked about Violet constantly, keeping her memory alive for the younger generations who had not known her as long. "Your grandmother was the bravest person I ever met," he told his great-grandson William one afternoon. They were sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, just as Garrett and Violet had done for so many years. "She came from nothing and built a life full of love and meaning." "Never forget that, William. Never forget that where you come from matters less than where you choose to go." "I will not forget, great-grandpa," William promised. Garrett lived for 3 more years after Violet's death. He spent those years surrounded by family, content in the knowledge that everything he and Violet had worked for would continue long after he was gone. The ranch was thriving under James's management. The grandchildren were growing into fine adults. And the great-grandchildren, those tiny faces that reminded him so much of Violet's green eyes and his own determined chin, they were the future. On a spring morning in 1938, Garrett Whitmore died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 76. When James went to wake him for breakfast, he found his father looking more at peace than he had since Violet's passing, a faint smile on his lips as if he had been dreaming of something wonderful. They buried him beside Violet on a hillside overlooking the ranch, under a big cottonwood tree they had planted together in their early years of marriage. The entire community turned out for the funeral, 3 generations of people whose lives had been touched by Garrett and Violet's love story. James stood at the grave, his own children and grandchildren around him, and spoke the words he knew his father would have wanted to hear. "They were everything to each other," he said. "When my mother whispered she was nobody, my father made her his everything, and in doing so, she made him whole. They built a life together that mattered, a love that lasted. And that love lives on in all of us standing here today. We are their legacy. We are proof that love can triumph over any hardship, that 2 people committed to each other can change the world, or at least their corner of it." The sun set over the Wyoming landscape that evening, painting the sky in the same beautiful colors Garrett and Violet had watched together for 53 years. And in the hearts of everyone who had known them, their love story continued, passed down through generations as proof that sometimes, when the world seems darkest, fate brings you exactly what you need exactly when you need it. Violet Harper had stumbled into Garrett Whitmore's ranch yard believing she was nobody. But he had seen the truth she could not see in herself. He had seen her strength, her courage, her capacity for love. And together, they had built something that would last far beyond their own lifetimes. They had built a family, a legacy, a love story for the ages. And every evening, as the sun set over the ranch that still bore the Whitmore name, you could almost feel their presence there on the porch, holding hands and watching the day fade into night, together as they always had been, as they always would be. Their story was proof that love could heal the deepest wounds, that kindness could change a life, that 2 souls who found each other against all odds could create something beautiful and lasting. In the end, that was their gift to the world. Not just the ranch or the family they raised, but the enduring reminder that every person has value, that everyone deserves love, and that sometimes the most important thing you can do is see someone truly see them and help them see themselves. Garrett made Violet his everything, but she had made him hers too. That was the secret they had understood from the beginning. Love was not about one person saving another. It was about 2 people choosing each other, day after day, year after year, building a life together one moment at a time. And what a life they had built! What a beautiful, extraordinary life!